Hello and welcome to my vlog on leadership. Today we want to talk about the subject of following and how following actually makes us a better leader. I've been pondering a lot these days about what it means to be a great leader, and one of the things that underlie the concept of greatness in leadership has to pull us back to the idea of being a great follower ourselves. Jesus said, "Follow me. Pick up your cross and follow me." And some will say, well, that's God. That's amazing. We should always follow God. Well, then Paul says in 1 Corinthians to the Corinthian church, whom he spiritually was a father to, he said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." There's this dynamic in humanity that God built inside of us to be followers. And I would suggest to you that any attempt to be great or to reach our greatest potential as leaders without understanding the concept of following and actually applying ourselves to becoming the best followers we can will fall short. If we rewind back to the garden, I think these thoughts. Think about how things began. In biblical hermeneutics, it's the law of first reference. As we look at the first reference to a biblical concept or truth or principle, it provides a lens for us looking forward through the scriptures to help us interpret that concept. So I love going back to the beginning and looking at how God made us. And if you remember, in the beginning, we were made in the image and likeness of God, and God gave us an assignment. He blessed us first, and then he gave us an assignment: be fruitful, multiply, take dominion, right? So the blessing of God comes, first the identity comes, then the blessing, and then the assignment. And in that order, man was functioning in cooperation with the leadership of God. And it says that in the cool of the day, God would come down and Adam and Eve would walk and talk with God. What a beautiful picture. But it was a picture of leadership. God was the leader and Adam and Eve were the followers. And that's how God set us up and designed us as human beings to function on the planet, to be following. And again, there are those who would say, well, that's easy. That's a no-brainer. We always want to follow God. And in fact, those would take it a step further and say we should only follow God and not follow others. And again, I understand the reference that Jesus said to the Pharisees. He made this reference and he said, you only have one Father. Don't call anyone else Father but God. But we have to understand the context of the people that he was talking to. You understand that he was talking to those in John who were claiming Abraham as their father. And that discussion ends with Jesus saying, you don't even know who your father is. Your father is the devil. So don't have any other ultimate reference point than God himself. Absolutely. We can go back to the garden in the beginning and establish that point. But to say that Jesus was meaning we should have no other fathers on the planet, we should not be following anyone else, is disingenuous. I mean, think about the model that Jesus built while he was on the planet. The kingdom he decided the rules, or the way the kingdom was rolled out, right? And how did he do that? What was the mechanism for the dispensing of the kingdom? We could say, well, his prayer ministry, his healing ministry. No, those were evidence that the kingdom came. He said, if demons are cast out, you know the kingdom has come near to you. What was the mechanism through which Jesus dispensed the kingdom? I would suggest to you that it was the relationship of following. He had the 12 come to him first. In fact, first he had the inner circle, the 3, right? Only the 3 got to see the transfiguration, and the 3 got to go with him certain places. He had a relational structure that by invitation and following provided a dispensing, a releasing of the kingdom through a relational structure, right? And I know some are probably bristling at that idea because of some things that we need to overcome to become a good follower. And I want to talk about those. But Jesus set up he utilized a relational structure of following, not just them following him, but it was the 12 then he sent the 12 out, and then he had the 70, remember? And then he sent the 70 out, and then the 120. So there was this graduating relational structure. And then Ephesians tells us in chapter 4 that he gave gifts to men, and he gave some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. If Corinthians tells us there's this list of anointed giftings that are released, and both of those were for the maturing of the saints to do the work of the ministry. That's leadership, right? it would be ludicrous for us to not recognize that Paul said to the Corinthians, follow me as I follow Christ. I'm your spiritual father. And he called Timothy his spiritual son. What am I getting at? There's something missing in us if we fail to take notice of the plan of God. We will have something lacking in our leadership if we bristle at or reject wholeheartedly the idea of being a better follower ourselves. Jesus is the best example of this, isn't he? He emptied himself of all of his godness and all the traits and all the power and all the glory of being God. He still was God, and yet he limited himself to humanity, Philippians 2. And in that state of being the Son of Man, he relied only on following his Father. He only did what he saw the Father doing. He only said what he heard the Father saying. And he allowed Holy Spirit to come be his power source, right? The dove came and miracles happened by the work of the Spirit of God through the Son of Man. He's our example. Of course, we want to follow God, but there's also this element of following someone else on the planet. And that's what I want to add to. I think there are two obstacles. And let's just touch them for a moment, and I want to hit the point of why following makes us a better leader. There are two obstacles, I think, that face most of us that cause us to be apprehensive about being followers, particularly those who are functioning and have a calling toward leadership. The first is the spirit of the orphan. It's the orphan spirit. It's what happened to man when sin entered and we fell in the Garden of Eden. Again, going back to the Garden of Eden, sin entered, and what was that first sin? Oh, that's right. It was mistrust of the one that was leading them. And that mistrust severed our fathering relationship with God, that leadership relationship, that leader-follow relationship. And we wanted to be our own leaders. We ate of the wrong tree, knowledge of good and evil, so we could prove by ourselves and through ourselves that we were good enough to demand that God bless us on our own merit. How tragic. It's the severing of that relationship that brought upon humanity this spirit of an orphan, the orphan spirit. Orphans have a great difficulty receiving genuine relationship, genuine love through relationship, following anyone because they were abandoned. And I think many of us, including our leaders, suffer still from this orphan spirit of abandonment. And I think the second reason that a lot of us, and leaders included, have an apprehension to following is the sheer pain that we've endured through dysfunctional relationships. In our homes with our natural parents, in our jobs with our bosses, in government with those elected leaders, and sadly to say, even in church with leaders who have abused us or abandoned us or used us for their own purposes. And in the pain of that dysfunctional leadership, sometimes we can reject the structure that Jesus himself laid down for us to follow in the New Testament church. I would say that we can overcome and disengage from an orphan spirit. We can be healed from the pain of dysfunctional relationships so that we can engage God through those powerful relationships, not just vertical, but horizontal. I can tell you my own testimony that I would not be here, I would not be who I am without following someone else. In fact, I will tell you this, I will not follow anyone who is not themselves also a follower. Because I've learned that the best leaders are actually the best followers. Here's a thought. What if we engage God as leaders to heal us from the pain of the dysfunctional leaderships that we've been under in the past and separate us from that spirit of an orphan or the orphan spirit? What if we engage God to process well through those things for ourselves and became a really good follower of someone else? I bet that would make us a better leader. I would suggest to you that our own life, Jesus said it this way, whatever freely you have received, that's what you can freely give. Interesting. If we as leaders live with this orphan spirit, and we live with the pain of dysfunctional leadership in our past that has affected us adversely, what do you think those that we are leading are probably suffering under. And if we give ourselves to be the best follower we can be, what if in that process we are not only ourselves cleansed, but we are tooled and skilled with a level of skill that will allow us to lead people well, really well. Even those who are hesitant and apprehensive to follow leadership. Dear ones, I just want to encourage you that the greatest leaders actually make the greatest followers. So who are you following?